Hey, this is Gina Grad.
Hi, this is Teresa Strasser.
Hi, everyone. This is Mike Errico.
Hey there. This is Casey Cavalier.
I'm Rocky Rose.
And you are listening to The Jay Franzi Show.
Lucky you.
Welcome to The Jay Franzi Show. A behind-the-curtain look at the entertainment industry with insights you can't pay for and stories you've never heard. Now, here's your host, Jay Franzi.
Well, hello, my fellow entertainment junkie. Welcome to the show. I am Jay Franzi, and this is your backstage pass to the entertainment industry. This week, we get to talk with not one, but two radio personalities. We get to talk with Steve Kass and Deb Morais. We'll talk to them about how they got their start in radio, how they transitioned into talk radio, and we'll discuss, well, the future of radio. Now, I had the opportunity to meet both Steve and Deb just recently, and I convinced them to come on the show and share their stories, so I can't wait to talk with them tonight. And if you would like to join in, comment, or fire off any questions, please head over to jfranzi.com. Now, let's get started. Debbie, you want to kick us off and tell us what got you involved in this?
So while I may say that I will start this, actually, Steve Kass, known as Kass Man, started on radio, AM radio, many years ago.
The 1800s.
The 1800s. Yep, I remember that.
And in the days of the, I would say, 1970s or so, I was starting my advertising career, and media buying was part of it, and radio media buying was part of it, and buying Kass was one of my issues. So as I would say to people years later,
buying advertising on my show.
So I would say, exactly. I would say
was one of her issues.
Yes, I bought him before I knew him, but we had clients who absolutely were very attracted to the demo, and he had the voice of reason and credibility. And anyway, long story short, we met years later. We started doing radio together on the same radio station that he was broadcasting on then. And at the same time, he was doing a TV show. I started doing TV. He was doing something called The Lively Experiment, and I started doing some TV broadcasting for a public information and public affairs show. So when terrestrial radio sort of bit the dust, kind of, we transitioned from the world of terrestrial radio to living the good life as a podcast. So we get the pleasure of doing things that we do all the time anyway, living the good life, as we like to say, food, wine, travel time, and sometimes political issues. So we get to do that together, and we've had some good feedback. People seem to get a kick out of what we have to say in our sort of repartee.
Steve, is she telling the truth?
Oh, she would never lie. One thing about Debbie, she does not lie, ever, ever. Doesn't exaggerate, doesn't lie.
And I walk on water, too.
Unlike me.
Well, yeah, of course. All right, sir. Well, let's do it. You said you started back in the 1800s. I think it's probably more like the 50s. Why don't you tell us what it was like?
Yeah, the 50s is correct, actually. I joke about the 1800s, but some people chuckle and most people just say, what? Anyway, I was at University of Rhode Island and looking for ways to avoid studying. And we had a campus radio station. And my father did a radio show in WJAR radio in Providence. And he did a weekly show for the National Conference of Christians and Jews. And he would go in each week and read a script. And he would drag me along, I guess. I'm not sure why, but he did. And while I was there, the program director actually said, would you like to be in radio? And I said, well, I never gave it a thought. He said, would you like to cut in those days, we cut a record, believe it or not. It was a 33 transcription.
Well, that is where the term came from.
Yes. And so he gave me a script, and I read it. It was a new script. And he listened to it, and he told me to never consider going into radio. It would not be a good idea. You'll never make it. Well, that motivated me, I must say, when a couple of years later, I beat his radio station in the ratings. which, let me tell you, that was a major win for me, and I was thrilled to do it. Don't tell me I can't do something because I'm in. So, and my guess is you're the same way. We're kindred spirits in that, we love a challenge.
Absolutely.
So I got a job on the number one station, believe it or not, as an intern for the summer. The program director came, Bruce Williams was his name, and he liked what I sounded like, so he had me on for the summer. And I filled in, and I was terrible, as most rookies would be. And one day, the afternoon drive guy said, I've got to go to Newport, Steve, and I need you to cover for me. Well, I had never spent a minute behind that mic, nor with the records or anything else. So I didn't know how to even run the turntable, let alone talk. So it was kind of difficult, and the engineer helped me, and I got through it. And then the phone rang, and it was the owner of the radio station who said, who the hell are you? I told him who I was, and he said, well, get out of my building and don't come back. Who put you on my, never mind, he went on and on. So, all right, I hung up on him. I said, well, that was a short career. And the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was a gentleman who owned WRIB, a small radio station that played foreign languages in the morning and rock and roll in the afternoon. It was a great combo. So he figured since I was on the number one station, I must be pretty good. So he's looking for a program director. He said, can you come in for an interview? I said, oh, I'd be glad to.
Right.
Well, I went in for the interview, and he hired me. Gave me $80 a week. And now I'm the boss, no less, of guys who've been on the air for decades. And they couldn't believe what happened. But anyway.
Fake it till you make it.
Yes. So anyway, we had some issues at first, but I settled in, and the rock and roll guy wouldn't let me have any of the records. He had them all. So what am I supposed to play?
Can't make this up, Jay.
No, so I went to a Beacon Records on North Main Street in Providence, where I used to buy albums and records. And I told the owner the story, and he said, I'll give you all the records you need. What do you need? I said, I need all of the hit records, whatever. I don't even know. So he gave me the pile of the best-selling records, and I now had more records than anybody else in the building. And I started playing my records called the Rock and Roll Review, and the show took off. And I started doing record hops, appearances at drive-in theaters, playing music before the movie.
A star is born.
And I'm making serious bread. I've been getting $100 a night for doing this stuff. They're giving me $80 a week.
And what year was this? This is still the 50s?
Yeah, this is still the 1850s. Or
1850s, yeah.
1950s or whatever, yeah. And I also got a job emceeing at a club called the Celebrity Club. And it started out as pretty much of an African-American club, but they brought in the biggest stars in the business. And I mean, you name them, they were there. And I'm the MC, so I'm getting to meet them all, build relationships with them all, which was an amazing help for the future, as you know. Ray Charles, Jackie Wilson, Bobby Day, you name them. Dizzy Gillespie, Ella Fitzgerald, and on and on and on. They were all there. So anyway, the show took off, and I'm doing great. And I couldn't wait to call that program director from JAR and tell him to go jump in the river. But so that's how it all started. And I could go on for about 2 days with all the stuff I've been doing in my life. And I've been blessed with wonderful health.
I'm glad you've got good health.
Well,
this is us being us, Jay.
Because the insurance policy isn't kept up just like
yeah, for somebody born in the 1800s, I'm doing pretty good.
Right.
I went out and cut a tree this morning.
You look good for 180.
That's true.
Exactly.
I do.
See, that is good. When you were doing the show, you say spinning records. So at that point, you were actually playing records. How much actual personality did you add to that, talking in between the records?
I was not a big injector of that, frankly, in the very beginning. As I, went on after a year or two, I got to be a little bit more of that. I really played the music. I loved the music. And I really enjoyed meeting and being friends with all these rock and roll stars. That was really great fun. And they would come to my record hops, they'd fly in from all over the country to make a free appearance at a record up. I'd have thousands of people there.
So how did you transition into talk radio then?
Well, I got a call from a guy who wanted me to do a radio show in Massachusetts. So I said, what is he? He said, a talk show. Well, I've never done that. He said, it's okay. Can you talk? I said, yeah, I think I can talk. Sure.
What station was this?
This was WSAR in Somerset, Mass. Nice little station. And I did that in the morning, 9 to noon. And that worked out very well. And then Providence called. I did so well there that John Franks from WHIM was toying with the idea of going to talk. So he said, I want you to be my guinea pig. You come in, you'll do talk at night, 7 to midnight around the Red Sox. And if it works out, we'll expand it and we'll go talk all day. So it worked out very well. And sure enough, we went all day. And that started a long and very successful career in talk radio. And I did talk in Rhode Island between WJAR, WHJJ, and back and forth between the two. One would try to get me away, and I'd sign a better contract. And then I played the free agent game, and that worked out very well. And the last one was, here's a blank check, fill it in. I said, oh my, this is going to be great fun. I'm going to enjoy this no end. And so I did that for 30, 35 years.
When you did the talk show, did it have a theme?
So while in some ways the conservative that talk show host that he was also sometimes a curmudgeon, but got to interview some wonderful authors. But by the time the two of us are doing things, you ask about a theme, we sort of did take a different tack. It was a weekend show, so it didn't need to be as content heavy. It was lighter, and it also addressed a different kind of demo. People were more interested on the weekend of what's the best restaurant and what kind of wine should I have with tonight's pasta, and how do you talk to a sommelier and how do you tip them and things of that nature. So this sort of offset part of the serious part of Kass, and it also was a fun thing for us to do, over the past few years.
It ties into your current show.
It does. And the other thing is kind of funny. Kass was on the air and he was interviewing many of the stars who were either showing up at local theater or perhaps even at the station because they wanted to push a record or whatever. And in a parallel universe, when we weren't together and I was just starting my career, one of my early gigs or contracts was with what was called the Warwick Musical Theater. Rhode Islanders know it as The Tent. And it used to be the summer home of wonderful shows that were occasionally week-long, but mostly 1 and 2 night gigs of fabulous musicians and top-notch comedians. And as we would find out later on in our lives, he might even be opening one of the shows or introducing the guest, and I would be behind the scenes in a way promoting it or working with them to make sure that their event was what it should do or should be as a PR counselor, what I call it. But anyway, so we've had some great fun with some of the people who we've worked with. I think when we were together, we were talking about some of the peculiar things or the quirky things, the demanding things that would happen with some of the celebrities, and some of them were pretty peculiar, to say the least. Anyway.
Well, let's hear the most memorable story.
So Sonny and Cher. There was a Sonny and Cher years ago, 80s. Yes, it would have been the early 80s. And even back then, when we would be promoting the show at the tent, there would be the things that we would do to help make their stay lovely. And most of the guests would be very gracious about what they would like, perhaps a dinner at a fine restaurant that's now out of business, but it was high end and it was lovely and people were gracious. Sonny and Cher. Well, even in those days, Cher would be asking for the first pressing of olive oil to dress her salad, and she had to have the best goat cheese that you could buy. And then fast forward 40 years later, no longer Sonny is with us, but Cher's performing, and it was when we were at WPRO for one of their I guess it might have been an anniversary event. So here she comes
charity
again.
event,
It was
yeah.
a charity event. So here she comes. It's many years later, decades later. Thinks that things have changed. Oh no. So she's she's the guest. She does the meet and greet, and the station is gracious enough to host her at the top floor, the penthouse suite.
Presidential suite of the Sheraton Biltmore.
No, Weston.
The
Weston.
The Weston.
But anyway, so here it's kind of pricey. Oh no.
And we paid for it.
Oh no, she couldn't possibly stay there. Things weren't to her liking. We just think
So
isn't
she
that
leaves.
bizarre? She leaves. She takes off in the limo. Anyway, the payback was the kids who were the street team. We got them to stay
They got
up.
to
in that.
stay
All our presidential suite for a night.
That was
fun.
just
That was great fun.
that was good karma, I have to say. But
Yeah.
you know, it's funny because some of the celebrities that we've worked with were so kind and so nice.
Most.
And then every once in a while you get a pip. Sorry, Cher.
And then there was Mickey Rooney, but that's another story.
Oh, do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Mickey Rooney showed up not too many years ago, actually, with a lady. I don't remember who she was. And one of our guys had bought him a Dunkin' Donut and coffee.
Nothing better.
It's a Rhode Island thing.
Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts owns Rhode Island.
Yep.
We don't move unless we have a Dunkin' in our hand. It's-
One on every corner.
Yeah, we don't like
Exactly.
any of the others, just Dunkin'. But anyway, so Mickey shows up and he's kind of grumpy, grouchy, takes a bite out of the donut and spits it out. Poo on the floor. So we've got a donut on the floor with his saliva all over it and a bite hole out of it. And he's as grouchy as any human being could be. And I'm ready to kick him right in the butt and throw him out of the building. I mean, I've never had anyone do that. My program director comes in and he looks at the floor and he sees this donut with a bite out of it. Well, who did that? Mickey Rooney, a great movie star, we've heard of him probably. Well, he cracked up. So he very carefully picked it up, sprayed it with something, and had it framed. And to this day, I believe that miserable donut is
Just
on the
hanging
wall.
in the wall.
Put it in a shadow box.
With not so fond memories of that little creep who did it. But anyway, I have
You
a
have to tell
Jackie
him the
Wilson story
you
too.
have to
Yeah,
tell him
that
that
was
story.
fun.
This is a very yes. This
I
is
did
a-
record hops all over the southern New England. And Fall River, Mass.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Know
an
it well.
old city. You know it well. And some of the young people there are not exactly candidates for Harvard. Probably a fair way to say it. So all of a sudden, Jackie is singing on stage. He's lip syncing one of his records. And I look down and I see 2 or 3 kids involved with switchblades in their hands, fencing with each other. And all I can envision a headline, 3 people cut themselves to death at a Kass record op. That's all I wanted. So Jackie's watching me in the middle of his lip syncing, reaches in his pocket and flips me an 8-inch switchblade to defend myself and join the battle. Like he thinks I want to.
Right.
But I had to stop it. I had no choice. So I get in the middle of these 3 guys and I'm waving my machete and they're slicing and slashing at me. And notice my sport jacket was now in 2 pieces from the back. They didn't get to the skin, but they cut my jacket in half. That was fun.
There's got to be one more story that you have to hear, Jay.
Well, you know
Do you
them
have
all.
time for one more
You
story?
tell me. Go. Yes, please.
Actually, this one's about Connie. These are his. I mean, I have some, but he's got some precious ones. And hopefully some of your listeners are familiar with Connie Francis. Tell them that story, Cass.
Well, Connie Francis has been hired by a group in Taunton, Mass. There's a
Yeah.
ballroom there. And I forget the name of it. But anyway, so they brought her in, and she showed up with one of the young ladies, her assistant, and they hired me to be the MC. So I MC the concert, and she performs and does a great job, as usual. And then she comes up to me after the thing is over and said, "Steve, you got to get me out of here." I said, "Why? What's the matter?" "Well, the guys who've hired me have some ideas about me and in maybe a bedroom that I absolutely want no part of, and I can't believe they even brought it up. And they seem very serious about kind of forcing me into a bed." I'd taken out a car from a dealer, a friend of mine, It was a Buick, and it was a fast car. I said, Connie, meet me in the back door, and we'll get you out of here. No problem. Back to the Sheraton Biltmore. Okay, so she's there, and I'm there. Fire up the car, and off we go. And who's behind us but the perverts?
The suitors.
Yeah, the suitors.
Really?
With a gun firing at the car. Oh, yeah. Now this is getting good.
Duck, Connie, duck.
Yeah, everybody down low. And let me see if this Century, whatever it was, can fly. And we came down Route 44, like 100 miles an hour, and left them in the dust. Then she was so grateful, she asked me to come to New York. She's just starting a TV show, a network show. And she wanted me to be like the master of ceremonies on national TV. I said, wow, that's big. So I auditioned for it. And they looked at me and they said, you're very good. We like you, except you don't look old enough to do the show. Had a baby face. I still have a baby. Don't I have a baby face?
You do, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And
for being almost 200 years old.
That's right. Back then, I was only like, I don't know, 21, 22. So I didn't get the job. I was crushed. Had visions of national
You didn't
TV.
get Connie Francis either, but that's a different story.
Actually, I could have, I guess, but she was in love with Bobby Darin.
Ah, yes.
It all
right.
worked out, Miss Debbie.
How could I compete with Bobby Darin? You know? Bobby Darin was at one of my record ops, along with a kid named Fabian. Remember that name?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Couldn't sing for beats, but he was a handsome kid.
That's all that matters.
When the girls saw him, they went absolutely
swoon.
crazy.
They would swoon.
And that should tell you what they did after the show was over. The girls came up to get autographs. And what do? First one opens her blouse and wants him to sign her bra. And I'm saying,
Imagine how bold, Jay.
Oh my God. Now what?
And I bet he didn't do it.
Oh, yes, he did. Yes, he did, happily.
Of course.
And there was a line of women, across the stage waiting for their opportunity. And I'm sitting there praying there's nobody from the media or the press there.
Or your mom.
Except for you.
For anybody
Except for you, right?
who didn't think that was appropriate, including me.
I just want to point out there was no gunfire in this event.
No, there was no gunfire, no switchblades.
Right.
Just pens and bras. That's all it was. But anyway, so we've had some stories.
The pen is mightier than the sword, apparently.
So I have a quick story. Several years ago, I had been granted a trip for two to the Academy Awards. I was very happy to go. It was an all-expense paid trip. Our meals, lodging, and our clothing for the gala event. And they put us up in the hotel. And as we're getting ready to get into our limos to go out to the event, it just so happens that Bill Murray is at the event. And he's looking at us as if we're someone. And I saw this puzzled look on his face as if he should really know who we are. Meanwhile, sad day. The next morning, he didn't show up for breakfast because he didn't end up with the award. He did not come down for breakfast. But anyway.
He was not happy.
Oh, no, he was not.
You love this story.
The Michael Jackson.
I used to take hundreds of locals on tours around the world. The travel agencies would hire me. Come travel with Steve Kass. And 90 to 100 people would sign up, and off we'd go all over. You name it, Australia, China, Israel, the Greek islands, on and on and on. Imagine I got paid for this on top of it.
Nice.
So it cost me nothing, and I got paid. But it was a challenge because I'm now responsible for all these people. At least in my opinion, I am. So, and there were some issues, things happened that were, people got sick, people fell, whatever. But anyway, so we finally got through the Greek islands, and now I almost hate to talk about Israel right now with what's going on over there. And I'm very upset with the coverage of it, but that's another story. So anyway,
Stick with the script.
Yes. So we're in Israel, and the Jewish holidays are taking place while we're there. So everything is pretty much shut down. So we end up in the Arab section, which I found fascinating because that was more interesting to me to see what's going on over there. We've heard so much about it. So I look around, and we're right next to the Wailing Wall, which is a very significant religious wall. And all of a sudden, I see Israeli soldiers with Uzis milling about, pretty much surrounding us. And I move my 100 people, including my mother, and up against a wall and said, "You guys stay there. I will find out what's going on." So I walked up to one of the soldiers and I said, "What's happening? Why are you guys running around with rifles?" He said to me, "Michael Jackson." I said, "Do you intend to kill him?" They said, "No." "What's going on?" "He wants to pray at the Wailing Wall." And the elderly, very orthodox old folks who are praying there heard he wants to pray, and they don't want a child molester praying at their wall.
Can you imagine?
Okay. Now I want to know who's going to tell Michael Jackson that story. So here comes the limo, and enter Michael Jackson. Pops out of the limo, ready to go. And so the poor soldiers had to tell him, "Well, I don't think that's going to be possible today, Mr. Jackson. There's some issues, whatever. You don't want to get into
Security
it."
issues.
Security
That's
issues,
it.
yes.
Security issues.
So
yes.
we have to not allow you to get there because for your health and your safety.
Right.
Yes.
And he was very grateful for that. And he got back in the limo and off he went. But when he ever said Michael Jackson with the guns, I almost wet my pants. I said, "Come on, how could that be?" But anyway, that's my Michael Jackson story.
Most of the time when I think of it, we're telling you stories of some occasions that weren't so wonderful. But over the years, I think each of us has had great times to work with people in the media, celebrities or whatever. But of course, what do you remember? Some of those
crazy ones,
stories that stay with us for a lifetime.
Well, for me, doing that for a living, and I interviewed well over 3,000 authors, some of the best and brightest people in the world. And I got to do that every week of my life. I mean, Henry Kissinger and people like that all the time. And I built a relationship with these people where they would give me their cell phone numbers. I could call them at any time and ask them the real story. What's the real answer here? Because so much of it's BS.
right?
And then, of course, you had to say you couldn't reveal your source, so you had to keep your word. Otherwise, you never got anything anyways.
Another piece, yeah. Let me ask you this question. I mean, what do you see for a future in radio these days?
Not much.
So I still have an advertising agency. I still, from time to time, do advertise on what they call terrestrial radio and also what they call linear TV, the over-the-air channels, or you might get them on cable as they go. But I have actually found that for some demo matches that I need to make, it really is better going to the old-timey radio and TV. I think that clearly it's moved away from that and everything is, connected TV and digital and all the rest of it. I don't see it going back. I guess it means to me that terrestrial radio is, at least on the AM, is going to be a short-lived prospect.
So as we see radio unfortunately dying off, what other challenges do you see with modern day technology?
That's a good question. Modern day technology. So I do a digital buy. I use various platforms. I think that the process of buying is wonky, or do I want to say inefficient and unreliable. So I'm not really happy with how programmatic buying is happening, but I'm very aware that that is what's going on. Of all the things that I see with technology, and how many people that there are so many people using screens and the amount of screen time is up. I'll just make one other. It's ridiculous. And one comment that I would make that's in my wheelhouse, which is communication, is that because so many people are inextricably tied to screens all the time, they are losing their ability to communicate person to person. And I'm sure you've gone to whether it was a fast food restaurant or fine dining, as they say, and you see people behind screens. And I see that very few or fewer are having the kinds of conversations that you would normally expect to have. One could say, good for you, Deb, because now I get paid to help people relearn or learn again how to communicate because they just don't do it so well. Text me. I actually do have people who will say to me, Deb, I don't want to have a conversation with you. Just text me. How do you negotiate a contract? How do you have meaningful communication with a, X number of, letters in a text? Can't happen. So I think that's a very big concern when it comes to all things technology. And that's going to continue far past Kass being 286, never mind 186.
All right, guys. Well, we do this thing here we call Unsung Heroes, where we take a moment to shine the light on somebody who's worked behind the scenes or somebody who's assisted or helped you along the way. Do you have anybody you'd like to shine a little light on?
Yeah, you.
Me?
You.
That's a good response, Kass.
That's correct. I was very impressed with you when we met, and I'm even more impressed with you listening to you talk and your values and your approach. I think you do a terrific job. And I want to compliment you.
You did do a great job. It was such a pleasure to be with you, and this has been so much fun.
A big thanks to both Steve and Deb for taking the time to share their stories with us. And as always, thank you for taking the time to hang with me here. I really do appreciate it. If you could, follow, share, and connect on all the socials. You can do all of this and find the links to everything mentioned over at jfranzi.com/episode 58. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Jay Franzi Show. Make sure you visit us at jfranzi.com. Follow, connect, and say hello. This episode has been brought to you by VR Knives, your source for 100% custom knives made by a true rock star. So, if you're in the market for a new piece of art, reach out to VR Knives. 407-421-5528. 407-421-5528.